If nobody in this room understands Japanese, then why are you all pretending you know what he agreed to? Emily Carter said it softly, almost gently, but the sentence stopped 12 people in the middle of dinner. At table 12 inside the Marlowe, one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants, forks paused above porcelain plates. A banker lowered his wine glass. Someone near the window stopped smiling. And Nathan Whitmore, the 42-year-old billionaire everyone had spent the evening trying to impress, slowly lifted his eyes from the Swiss watch beneath his cuff. Emily stood beside him holding a silver coffee pot. 30 years old. White blouse. Black apron. Light brown hair tied neatly behind her head. To everyone else, she had been part of the room without belonging to the conversation. She refilled water. Replaced silverware. Remembered who wanted coffee without cream. Invisible work performed with practiced grace. Nathan had barely noticed her. Until now. Excuse me, asked Charles Mercer, the senior advisor seated across from Nathan. Emily's fingers tightened slightly around the coffee pot. Nothing, sir. No, Nathan said. His voice was quiet, but the table obeyed it immediately. You said something about Japanese. Emily met his gaze. I should not have interrupted. 20 seconds earlier, Charles had summarized a statement from Kenji Sato, a representative of a Tokyo investment group participating by secure video. According to Charles, Sato had effectively accepted the proposed terms, leaving only minor details for the morning. Nathan's advisors relaxed. One executive had even whispered that the difficult part was over. Then another man laughed and said, nobody here understands Japanese anyway. Emily had been pouring coffee when she heard it. She had also heard Sato's actual words. Nathan leaned back. Do you understand Japanese? Emily hesitated. Every face at the table was now turned toward her. Yes. Charles smiled with polite disbelief. A little. Emily looked at him. Enough to know Mr. Sato did not agree to what you just said. Silence. Not dramatic silence. Something heavier. The kind created when confidence suddenly discovers a question it cannot answer. Charles placed his napkin beside his plate. I have handled international transactions for 20 years. I am sure you have. Emily's tone remained respectful. But he did not say the terms were acceptable. Nathan's expression changed. What did he say? Emily glanced toward the video screen, where Sato waited with the patient stillness of someone accustomed to being translated by others. Then she answered Nathan in Japanese. The sentence was smooth. Formal. Natural. Nathan stopped moving. Charles stared at her. Emily continued for only a few seconds before switching back to English. He said the proposal could remain under consideration if the conditions were revised. That is not acceptance. It is an invitation to continue negotiating. Nathan looked toward Sato. For the first time that evening, he addressed him directly in Japanese. Sato answered. Nathan's eyes narrowed. Then he asked another question. Another answer came. The executives around the table could only listen. Emily lowered the coffee pot, intending to step away. Wait, Nathan said. She stopped. His watch no longer interested him. Neither did the untouched dessert in front of him. He looked at her apron, then at her face, as if realizing how completely those two things had shaped his first assumption. What is your name? Emily Carter. Miss Carter, where did you learn Japanese? Emily glanced at the other tables waiting for service. That is a longer answer than your coffee will stay warm for. A faint expression crossed Nathan's face, almost a smile. Charles did not share it. Nathan, we have professional people handling this. Emily immediately stepped back. And I am not asking to replace them. Nathan studied her. That answer interested him more than confidence would have. Then why say anything? Emily looked toward Sato on the screen. Because everyone was discussing what he meant. She paused. Nobody was listening to what he said. Nathan said nothing. Outside, rain traced silver lines down the tall windows overlooking Chicago. Inside, Emily quietly refilled his coffee and moved toward the next table. 12 executives watched her leave. Nathan watched. Longer than the rest. He had entered the Marlowe believing the most important voices would be sitting at his table. Now one question refused to leave him. Who exactly was the waitress who had understood what everyone else had missed? For the next 20 minutes, Emily Carter behaved as though nothing unusual had happened. She carried 2 entrees to table 9, replaced a dropped fork before the guest could ask, and quietly showed a new server how to correct an order that had been entered twice. At table 12, however, nothing felt ordinary anymore. Nathan Whitmore listened while Charles Mercer continued discussing the transaction, but his attention kept drifting toward the dining room. Emily moved with the calm efficiency of someone who understood that good service was often invisible. She remembered that an elderly woman near the window wanted hot tea with lemon instead of honey. She brought an extra napkin to a father whose young daughter had spilled water. When the kitchen delayed an order, Emily apologized without blaming anyone and returned 5 minutes later with an update before the customers became impatient. Nathan noticed all of it now, not because any single action was remarkable, but because she never seemed to need recognition for doing something well. Near the service station, Emily opened a small black notebook and wrote something quickly before slipping it beneath the counter. Nathan caught only a glimpse of 2 lines. One was English. The other was Japanese. "You are watching the Waitress," Charles said quietly. Nathan turned back toward him. "I am watching The Room." Charles gave a restrained smile. She probably studied Japanese in college. Useful skill. Strange place to use it. Nathan looked toward Emily again. Maybe this is not a strange place. Charles did not answer. Across the dining room, an elderly Japanese couple entered beneath a shared umbrella. The hostess greeted them and began explaining the menu, but the woman looked uncertain. Emily noticed before anyone called her. She approached, bowed her head slightly, and spoke to them in Japanese. The woman's face immediately relaxed. Her husband smiled. Emily listened carefully, pointed out several dishes, then checked something with the kitchen before returning. There was no performance. No glance toward table 12 to see whether Nathan had noticed. She simply helped them and moved on. Nathan's coffee remained untouched. Later, when Emily passed his table, he asked, "Do you speak Japanese with customers often?" "When it helps. And nobody here thinks that is unusual?" Emily glanced toward the elderly couple. "Mr. Alvarez thinks it is useful when someone needs help. That is enough for me." "Mr. Alvarez?" "Our manager." Nathan leaned slightly forward. "You could make considerably more money using that skill somewhere else." Emily's expression did not change. "That is an interesting conclusion from knowing me for less than an hour." Charles looked down, hiding a smile. Nathan recognized the correction immediately. "Fair." Emily reached for his coffee cup. "Warm it up, please." She poured slowly. "People assume a job tells them how far someone got in life," she said. "Sometimes it only tells them where they are standing today." Nathan looked at her. "And where are you standing today?" Emily set the pot down. "At table 12, apparently." This time Nathan smiled. She almost did too. Then a younger server hurried toward Emily holding a printed receipt. "I think I charged the wrong table." Emily took the paper, scanned it once, and pointed toward the register. "You transferred the appetizers, but not the entrees. Move those 3 items, then reopen table 6. Nothing is lost." "Thank you. You are fine. Slow down." The server left looking relieved rather than embarrassed. Nathan watched her go. "You do that often too." "Do what?" "Fix problems without making people feel small." Emily was silent for a moment. People learn faster when they are not busy defending their dignity. Nathan's smile disappeared. Something about the sentence sounded practiced, not because she had repeated it, but because she had lived it. Before he could ask more, the Japanese couple called gently to Emily. She excused herself and walked away. At the service station, she opened the black notebook again. This time Nathan saw a handwritten phrase before she closed it. The Japanese characters were followed by a careful English note about context, hierarchy, and what silence could mean in negotiation. Nathan looked at his Swiss watch, then stopped himself. For years, he had measured meetings in minutes and people in usefulness. Emily Carter seemed to measure something else entirely. And the more he watched her, the less he believed Japanese was simply a language she had happened to learn. By 8:45, the private dinner had stopped feeling private. Word had traveled quietly through the Marlowe that Nathan Whitmore was seated at table 12, and the restaurant staff moved with an extra degree of care whenever they passed his section. Nathan was accustomed to it. Wealth changed the temperature of rooms before he even spoke. People straightened their jackets. Managers appeared unexpectedly. Executives laughed a little faster at his jokes. Yet that evening, the strange part was how little anyone seemed interested in what he actually meant. Charles Mercer continued reviewing the proposed partnership with the Tokyo Investment Group, while 2 bankers debated what Nathan would probably accept. "Nathan values speed," one said. "He will not want another week of revisions." Nathan looked at him. "You could ask me." The banker stopped. "Of course." Nathan leaned back. "Do I want another week?" The man hesitated. "I assumed you wanted momentum." That is the problem with assumptions. Across the room, Emily placed a dessert plate in front of the elderly Japanese couple. Nathan watched the woman thank her warmly. Emily answered in Japanese, listened to something the husband said, then laughed softly. It was the first time Nathan had seen her expression completely relaxed. Charles followed his gaze. "You are still thinking about her translation." "I am thinking about why everyone at this table heard what they expected to hear." "We had an interpreter." "We had an interpretation." Nathan glanced toward the video screen, now dark after Kenji Sato had ended the call. "Those are not always the same thing." Charles shifted in his chair. "The distinction is being exaggerated." Nathan tapped one finger against his coffee cup. "A conditional proposal became an agreement by the time it reached me. That distinction is worth several $100 million. Nobody answered. Emily approached with the coffee pot. Nathan noticed that she looked at the cup before looking at him. "Still warm," he said. "Then I finally did something right tonight," she replied. Charles gave her a thin smile. "You certainly made an impression." Emily met his eyes. "That was not the intention." "What was?" Nathan asked. "Accuracy. One word." No apology around it. Nathan gestured toward the empty chair at the far end of the table, then reconsidered. He remembered what she had said about assumptions. May I ask you a question while you work? You just did. Nathan smiled despite himself. Where did you learn to listen like that? Emily's hand paused over the coffee cup. For the first time that evening, the question seemed to reach somewhere she had been carefully keeping closed. She looked toward the rain beyond the windows. From people who were tired of being misunderstood. Nathan answered in Japanese, asking whether she meant people in Japan. Emily replied in the same language without hesitation. Her pronunciation was controlled, but it was not merely pronunciation that caught him. She adjusted her level of formality naturally. She understood the unspoken distance between a casual question and a personal answer. Nathan changed the phrasing. Emily changed with him. Charles watched the exchange without understanding a word. After several sentences, Nathan returned to English. You are not conversational. Emily raised an eyebrow. I believe we are having a conversation. You know what I mean. I do. She moved the coffee pot to her other hand. But labels make people stop asking questions. Nathan glanced at her black notebook resting near the service station. And questions matter to you. Good ones do. What makes a good question? Emily considered him for a moment. One that is not secretly asking for the answer you already want. The banker who had spoken earlier looked down at his plate. Nathan did not. The sentence belonged to more than language. He knew that immediately. His entire career had been built around rooms where powerful people asked questions, then rewarded whoever confirmed their instincts. He had always believed he was different because he invited disagreement. Now he wondered how often people had disagreed only until they learned what pleased him. Miss Carter, Charles said, you seem unusually interested in business communication for someone working in hospitality. The table went still again. Emily's expression remained composed, but Nathan heard what Charles had placed beneath the sentence. For someone like you. Emily did too. Hospitality is business communication, she said. The difference is that when I misunderstand someone, I usually find out before they leave the table. Nathan lowered his eyes, hiding a smile. Charles reached for his water. Emily stepped away to continue her shift. Nathan watched her return to the service station, where she opened the small black notebook and added another line beneath the Japanese writing. He could not read it from 12 feet away. He did not need to. Something had become clear. Everyone at table 12 knew Nathan Whitmore was a billionaire. They knew his companies, his reputation, and the estimated value of his time. Emily Carter seemed to be the only person in the room who had noticed something far simpler. Being important did not mean being understood. At 9:12, the conversation at table 12 returned to the numbers. Charles Mercer opened a revised summary on his tablet and spoke with the confidence of a man who believed the difficult moment had passed. The Tokyo Group remains prepared to move forward at the proposed valuation, he said. We can finalize the framework tonight and handle the remaining language tomorrow. Nathan Whitmore did not answer immediately. His coffee sat untouched beside his right hand. Prepared to move forward, he repeated. Those were Sato's words. Charles glanced toward another advisor. That was the substance. Emily was 3 tables away collecting dessert plates when she heard the phrase. She continued working. Nathan noticed. 5 minutes later, Kinji Sato rejoined the secure video call from Tokyo after receiving a message from Nathan's team. Charles greeted him, and the discussion resumed. Sato spoke carefully in Japanese for nearly a minute. The interpreter beside Charles translated. Mr. Sato appreciates the revised structure and believes the proposal can advance toward final approval. Several executives relaxed. One closed his folder. Another whispered, there we go. Nathan did not move. Emily approached with fresh coffee. As she reached the table, Sato added one final sentence in Japanese. Emily's eyes shifted toward the screen. Just once. Nathan saw it. Miss Carter. She stopped. Yes. You heard that. It was not really a question. Emily looked toward Charles, then toward the interpreter. I did. Was that translation accurate? The interpreter stiffened. Charles leaned forward. Nathan, we cannot conduct a transaction by asking restaurant staff to audit professional translation. Emily lowered the coffee pot. He is right about one thing. I should not be part of your transaction. Nathan kept his eyes on her. I am not asking you to negotiate. I am asking what you heard. Emily hesitated. Sato waited silently on the screen. The translation was not false, she said, but it removed the condition. Nathan's expression sharpened. What condition? Emily spoke carefully. Mr. Sato said they could advance toward internal review only if the governance protections were reconsidered first. The room went quiet. Internal review, Nathan repeated. Not final approval? Not the way I heard it. The interpreter opened his notes. The phrase can carry flexibility depending on context. Emily nodded. Yes, but the sentence after it narrows that flexibility. Nathan turned toward Sato and addressed him directly in Japanese. He asked whether the governance terms were still unresolved. Sato answered immediately. Nathan followed with another question. Then another. With each response, the atmosphere around the table changed. The Tokyo group had not rejected the proposal, but neither had it crossed the line Charles's summary suggested. They wanted changes before the deal could move to the next stage. Nathan ended the exchange politely, promising a revised discussion the following morning. When the screen went dark, he closed the folder in front of him. Nothing gets approved tonight. Charles stared at him. We are close. Close is not closed. We could lose momentum over wording. Nathan looked at Emily. Is it wording? She took a breath. Sometimes one word tells you where the door actually is. Charles gave a frustrated sigh. This is becoming absurd. She is a waitress. Emily's face remained calm, but the younger server near the service station looked toward them. Nathan did too. And was she wrong? Charles said nothing. Nathan repeated the question. Was she wrong? The interpreter finally answered. No. Her distinction is defensible. Defensible? Nathan asked. I would say accurate. The room settled into silence again. Emily reached for Nathan's cup. Your coffee is cold. Nathan glanced down as if noticing it for the first time. Seems appropriate. She replaced it with a fresh cup. Do not mistake me for an expert on your deal, she said quietly. I heard a sentence. That is all. A sentence everyone else turned into something more convenient. That happens. Often. Emily looked at the dark video screen. More often when people are in a hurry to hear yes. Nathan absorbed the answer. The proposed partnership was worth more than $600 million. 12 experienced professionals had gathered to discuss it. Yet the person who had forced them to slow down was wearing a black apron and carrying coffee. Nathan reached toward his Swiss watch, then deliberately moved his hand away. Tomorrow morning, he told Charles. I want the entire translation reviewed from the beginning. Charles looked displeased. By whom? Someone independent. Emily started toward the next table. Nathan called after her. Miss Carter. She turned. Thank you. Emily gave a small nod. Thank Mr. Sato. He was the one who said it. Then she walked away, leaving Nathan with a realization far more uncomfortable than a delayed business deal. Emily had not changed the meaning of the conversation. She had simply refused to let everyone else change it first. The dinner should have ended after Nathan postponed the decision, but Charles Mercer seemed unwilling to. Let the evening close with a waitress holding the most credible interpretation in the room. At 9:30, while Emily cleared 2 coffee cups from table 12, Charles leaned back and studied her with a polite expression that carried no warmth. Miss Carter, since your Japanese is apparently exceptional, perhaps you can settle something for us. Emily stopped. If it concerns your order, certainly. A few executives smiled. Charles did not. He spoke a rapid sentence in Japanese, deliberately using formal business vocabulary and an old expression rarely heard in casual conversation. Nathan recognized what was happening immediately. It was not a question. It was a test disguised as curiosity. Emily understood too. She placed the cups carefully on her tray. Would you like more coffee, Mr. Mercer? Charles blinked. I asked you something. I heard you. Then answer. Emily's eyes remained steady. No. The table went silent. Charles gave a short laugh. You corrected professional interpreters twice tonight, but now you do not want to demonstrate that you actually understand the language? Nathan looked at Emily, waiting to see what she would do. For one uncomfortable second, he realized he was participating in the same test simply by waiting for her performance. Emily shifted the tray against her hip. Language is not a trick I perform for tips. No anger. No embarrassment. Just a boundary stated clearly enough that nobody could pretend not to understand it. Nathan lowered his eyes. The sentence had corrected him too. Charles sat forward. Nobody suggested it was a trick. You asked a question you already know the answer to, Emily said. You are not trying to communicate with me. You are trying to see whether I fail. Charles opened his mouth, but Nathan spoke first. Enough. His voice was quiet. Charles turned toward him. Nathan, surely you are curious. I was. Nathan looked at Emily. That does not make this appropriate. Something changed in her expression. Not gratitude. More like recognition that he had finally noticed the line before crossing it. Nathan turned back to Charles. She identified 2 distinctions. Both were confirmed. We do not need a third demonstration. You are taking business guidance from restaurant staff. No, I am taking accurate information wherever I find it. Charles looked around the table, searching for support. Nobody volunteered. Emily lifted the tray. May I continue working now? Nathan nodded. Of course. She walked toward the service station. A minute later, Nathan followed, stopping several feet from the counter so he would not interfere with her work. Miss Carter. Emily looked up. If this is another Japanese question, my rates have increased. Nathan laughed before he could stop himself. I owe you an apology. For what Mr. Mercer did. For what I almost did. Emily waited. I wanted to hear you answer him, Nathan admitted. Part of me wanted proof. You already had proof. I know. Then what you wanted was a performance. Nathan glanced toward table 12. Yes. Emily wiped a small circle of spilled coffee from the counter. People do that when something does not fit where they put it. Meaning, a waitress speaks Japanese, so suddenly everyone needs an explanation. A billionaire speaks Japanese, and nobody asks why. Nathan became still. He had spent years in Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto building partnerships. People treated his fluency as evidence of discipline. Emily's fluency had been treated as a mystery requiring justification. That is fair, he said. Fair is not always comfortable. You seem comfortable saying uncomfortable things. Only when necessary. Emily reached beneath the counter for her black notebook. It slipped from her hand and landed closed near Nathan's shoe. He bent to pick it up, then stopped before touching it. Yours? Yes. She retrieved it herself. Nathan noticed the worn cover and pages softened by years of use. That notebook seems important. Emily held it against her apron. It reminds me of things I do not want to forget. Japanese. Some of it. Business. Her eyes shifted slightly. Some of that too. Nathan understood the boundary this time. He did not ask to see inside. Instead, he returned to table 12. Behind him, Emily opened the notebook to a page filled with careful Japanese notes written years earlier. At the top was a date from Kyoto. Beneath it was one English sentence she had underlined twice. The most expensive misunderstandings begin when powerful people stop listening. By 10 o'clock, the dining room had begun to empty. The rain outside had softened to a silver mist, and the city lights beyond the Marlowe's windows looked blurred and distant. Nathan's advisors were gathering folders when he noticed Emily sitting alone for the first time that evening. She had taken a 5-minute break at a small table near the service station, her black apron still tied around her waist, the worn notebook open beside a glass of water. Nathan did not approach immediately. An hour earlier, he would have. Now he understood that curiosity did not automatically grant permission. Emily looked up and noticed him waiting. You can ask, she said. Nathan walked closer. How did you know I had a question? You have been staring at the notebook instead of your watch. Nathan glanced at his wrist. Apparently, I am becoming predictable. Everyone is predictable eventually. He nodded toward the chair opposite her. May I? Emily considered him, then nodded. Nathan, Saturday. You said the notebook helps you remember things. It does. I am curious about Kyoto. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You saw the date. Only the date when the notebook fell. I did not read the page. Emily studied his face, deciding whether she believed him. Then she turned the notebook around herself. I spent 11 months in Kyoto when I was 22. Nathan looked down at the page. Japanese characters filled the paper in neat handwriting, surrounded by English notes about hierarchy, context, silence, and negotiation. College. Exchange program. Japanese language and international business. That explains the fluency. Some of it. She turned another page. Classes teach vocabulary. Living somewhere teaches you what people mean when they choose not to say something directly. Nathan recognized the distinction immediately. Like tonight. Exactly like tonight. Emily showed him an older page containing notes from a university seminar. My research project was about cross-cultural misunderstandings in American and Japanese business negotiations. Not mistranslation exactly. More like what happens when people translate words correctly but interpret intention incorrectly. Nathan looked at her. You studied this? For 2 years. And Charles thought he was testing a waitress with a difficult phrase. Emily closed the notebook gently. That is why tests are dangerous. Sometimes they reveal more about the person asking the question. Nathan leaned back. Why did you leave? The calmness in Emily's expression changed. Just slightly. My father owned a small printing company outside Milwaukee. While I was finishing school, he became seriously ill. My mother could not manage the business and care for him alone. So you went home. I thought it would be for 1 semester. She looked toward the restaurant windows. It became 3 years. Nathan said nothing. Emily seemed grateful for the silence. The company eventually closed. My father recovered enough to live independently, but by then I had student loans, bills, and a resume with a long gap, where employers expected ambition to look more organized. And the Marlowe hired you. Mr. Alvarez did. How long ago? 14 months. Nathan looked around the elegant dining room. Do you want to return to international business? Emily smiled faintly. That question usually comes with an assumption. Which one? That I must hate where I am because I once planned to be somewhere else. Nathan considered that. Do you? No. This job kept my family steady when we needed steady. There is dignity in that. She touched the notebook. But yes, I still read. I still study. I still remember what I wanted. Nathan's eyes moved to one page she had left partially visible. A heading referred to indirect agreement and conditional language in Japanese negotiations. Beneath it were notes almost identical to the problem at table 12. You wrote about tonight years before tonight happened. Emily gave a quiet laugh. Not tonight. A pattern. What pattern? People hear through their expectations. She closed the notebook. Language only makes it easier to notice. Nathan looked across the room at Charles, who was speaking with two. Bankers near the entrance. For years, Nathan had believed his success came partly from surrounding himself with experts. Tonight, a waitress had reminded him that expertise meant very little if everyone was rewarded for reaching the same conclusion. Tomorrow, I am having the entire translation independently reviewed, he said. Good. If you were me, what would you expect them to find? Emily shook her head. Do not make me your shortcut. Nathan paused. Then he smiled. Because I would be asking for the answer I want. You are learning. Her break ended. Emily stood, retied the knot of her black apron, and picked up the notebook. Nathan remained seated as she returned to work. He had finally learned why she spoke Japanese. But the answer had created a more important question. How many capable people had he overlooked simply because their lives had not unfolded in the order he expected? At 8:15 the next morning, Nathan Whitmore was already in his office 40 floors above downtown Chicago. The rain had cleared, leaving Lake Michigan bright beneath a pale blue sky, but Nathan barely noticed. 3 independent language specialists had joined a secure conference call. None had attended the dinner. None had worked with Charles Mercer. Nathan had sent them the original Japanese audio and asked one question only. What was actually communicated? By 9:10, their conclusions were remarkably consistent. Emily had been right. The Tokyo group had expressed interest, not acceptance. Their language repeatedly tied progress to unresolved governance protections, internal review, and further revisions. Yet something else emerged. No single translation had been completely false. Instead, each summary had become slightly more confident than the one before it. A cautious phrase became encouraging. Encouraging became favorable. Favorable became nearly approved. By the time the message reached Nathan, uncertainty had almost disappeared. So nobody changed one sentence dramatically, Nathan said. Dr. Helen Park, the lead language consultant, shook her head. That is what makes this interesting. The distortion happened gradually. Why? That is not a language. Question. Nathan understood. At 9:30, Charles entered carrying a leather portfolio. I assume this is about last night. Nathan placed the independent report on his desk. 3 specialists reviewed the recording. Charles sat down. And Emily Carter was accurate. Charles gave a tired sigh. We already established that. No, we established that she caught 2 phrases. This review shows a pattern. Nathan slid the report across the desk. Charles read silently. Nobody intentionally misrepresented anything. I did not say they did. Then what is the issue? Nathan looked toward the city below. Every time uncertainty passed through another person, it became more certain. Charles closed the report. That happens in business. Executives need conclusions. Executives need truth. They also need decisions. Nathan turned back. A decision based on cleaner language than reality is not efficiency. Charles remained silent. Nathan thought about Emily's notebook. People here through their expectations. Who wanted this deal to close quickly, he asked. Everyone wants it to close. That was not my question. Charles shifted. The advisory team believes timing matters. And what did they believe I wanted? Charles looked at him for a long moment. Momentum. The answer landed harder than Nathan expected. Because I told them that. Because you always want momentum. Nathan looked down at his Swiss watch. For years, it had represented discipline to him. This morning it looked more like evidence. So people heard Sato through what they thought I wanted. Charles did not answer. He did not need to. At 10:40, Nathan called Kenji Sato directly. No advisors. No summaries. They spoke in Japanese for nearly 30 minutes. Nathan asked what had made the Tokyo group hesitant. Sato explained that the financial structure was acceptable, but the governance language suggested Whitmore Holdings wanted control before trust had been established. Nathan listened without defending himself. Near the end, Sato said something that stayed with him. Last night, your waitress listened more carefully than your table. Nathan smiled faintly. Her name is Emily Carter. Then remember it. At 11:20, Nathan called the Marlowe. Mr. Alvarez answered. Emily does not start until 4, the manager explained. Nathan paused. Do not call her in early. I was not going to. Nathan almost laughed at himself. Good. He ended the call and opened the independent report again. For the first time, he saw the evening clearly. Emily had not saved a deal. She had interrupted a pattern. Nobody at table 12 had been trying to deceive him. That would have been easier. Instead, intelligent people had gradually polished uncertainty because they believed certainty was what power rewarded. At 4:20, Nathan entered the Marlowe alone. No advisors. No private table. Emily was near the service station tying her black apron when she noticed him. You came back. The review came back. She waited. You were right. Emily shook her head gently. The language was right. Nathan understood the correction. 3 independent specialists confirmed the conditions were softened as the summaries moved upward. Was someone manipulating them? Not exactly. Then what happened? Nathan looked at her. They thought they knew what I wanted to hear. Emily's expression became thoughtful rather than triumphant. That is harder to fix. Why? Because you cannot fire an assumption. Nathan smiled, then became serious. No, but I can stop rewarding it. Emily picked up her order pad. That would be a start. Nathan reached toward his watch out of habit, then let his hand fall. Yesterday, he had thought the problem was translation. Today, he understood the language had only exposed something larger. The people around him had not stopped listening because they lacked intelligence. They had stopped listening because they had learned that certainty traveled faster than doubt. And somewhere between a billionaire's expectations and a waitress's quiet correction, Nathan finally understood that power did not always silence people by telling them not to speak. Sometimes it silenced them by teaching them which answers were easiest to reward. Emily looked at Nathan for a moment, then glanced toward table 12, where another group of guests had already taken the seats that had seemed so important the night before. You came all the way back to tell me that, she asked. Not only that. Nathan reached inside his jacket and removed a plain business card. He placed it on the edge of the service station without pushing it toward her. Whitmore Holdings has a cross-cultural strategy team. We work with partners in Tokyo, Osaka, Singapore, and Seoul. I think you should meet them. Emily looked at the card but did not touch it. Meet them as what? A candidate. For what position? Cross-cultural analyst. Nathan paused. Possibly associate level, depending on the interview. Emily's expression remained unreadable. And this offer exists because I corrected your advisors over coffee? The opportunity exists because you demonstrated something my advisors failed to demonstrate. That is not the same as being qualified for the job. Nathan stopped. It was not the answer he expected, which by now should have made him expect it. You studied this field. Years ago. You still study it. That does not mean I should walk into your company through a side door because the owner happened to notice me. Nathan looked at the business card between them. Most people would call that networking. Most people are not going to spend the next year wondering whether everyone thinks they were hired as the billionaire's waitress. The words were calm, but Nathan heard the weight beneath them. Emily had spent years watching people reduce complicated lives to simple labels. She was not going to trade one label for another. What would make it fair, he asked. Emily finally picked up the card. The same application everyone else completes. The same interview. The same questions. Someone besides you deciding whether I belong there. Nathan nodded slowly. And if they say no? Then they say no. You are willing to risk that? Emily almost smiled. It is not a risk if what I want is an honest answer. Nathan looked toward his Swiss watch, then deliberately ignored it. All right. He took out his phone, but stopped before making a call. Would contacting recruiting now count as interfering? Depends what you say. What should I say? That someone is interested in applying. Nathan laughed softly. Nothing else. Nothing else. He typed a short message and showed her the screen before sending it. A candidate named Emily Carter may apply for the open cross-cultural analyst role. Please route her through the standard process. No special consideration. Emily read it, then nodded. Send it. He did. Nothing dramatic followed. No applause. No oversized check. Emily returned to carrying plates, and Nathan took a small table near the window. For the next hour, he answered emails while she worked. At 6:10, during another short break, Emily opened the careers page on her phone. The position required Japanese proficiency, research experience, strong written communication, and familiarity with international business practices. Her thumb stopped over the application button. For years, she had told herself she was still studying because knowledge mattered even if nobody ever asked to see it. Now someone was asking. That frightened her more than she expected. Mr. Alvarez approached carrying a stack of menus. Everything okay? Emily showed him the listing. He read it, then looked at her. You are qualified. I used to be. That is not what I said. Emily looked toward Nathan, who was deliberately not watching. He offered me an interview. No, Alvarez said. He showed you where the door is. He handed back the phone. You still have to walk through it. At 6:18, Emily submitted the application. 3 days later, she received an email from Whitmore Holdings. Not from Nathan. From recruiting. Her first interview was scheduled for Tuesday morning. Nathan learned about it only after Human Resources informed him that Emily had passed the initial resume review without his involvement. He read the message once, smiled, and closed it. On Tuesday, Emily entered the Whitmore Holdings lobby wearing a navy suit she had owned since college. Her black diner apron was folded neatly inside her bag because she was scheduled at the Marlowe that evening. She checked in at reception and waited beneath a wall displaying offices around the world. When the elevator doors opened, Nathan happened to be crossing the lobby. Their eyes met. He did not approach. He did not introduce her to anyone. He simply gave a small nod. Emily returned it. Then she stepped into the elevator alone. For the first time since they met, Nathan was not opening a door for her, testing her, or asking her to prove anything to him. He was doing something harder for a powerful man. He was staying out of the way while she earned the answer for herself. 6 weeks later, Nathan Whitmore returned to the Marlowe just after 7 on a Thursday evening. There was no private dinner waiting for him. No advisors. No secure video call with Tokyo. He had reserved table 12 for one person and ordered coffee before opening the folder he had brought from the office. The restaurant looked almost exactly as it had the night everything changed. Soft amber light reflected from polished glassware. Conversations blended into a low, comfortable hum. Beyond the windows, Chicago moved beneath a clear autumn sky. But one detail was missing. Emily Carter was not wearing a black apron. Nathan knew why. She had completed 3 interviews, a Japanese proficiency assessment, a written analysis, and a case exercise reviewed by people who had never been told how they met. She had not received special consideration. In fact, Nathan had removed himself from every hiring discussion involving her. The final recommendation came from the cross-cultural strategy director, Emily Carter, junior cross-cultural analyst. Strong language ability. Exceptional contextual reasoning. Recommended for hire. She had accepted the position 4 weeks earlier. Tonight, however, she was back at the Marlowe to visit Mr. Alvarez and the servers who had covered shifts while she interviewed. Nathan saw her near the service station wearing a simple navy coat, her light brown hair loose around her shoulders. The old black notebook was tucked beneath one arm. She noticed him and walked over. Table 12 again. I am apparently sentimental. That sounds expensive. Nathan smiled. Less expensive than misunderstanding a $600 million negotiation. Emily looked at the coffee. Is it cold? Nathan touched the cup. Getting there. Some traditions survive. She sat across from him after he gestured toward the empty chair. How is Tokyo? She asked. The revised agreement passed internal review yesterday. With the governance changes? With most of them. Nathan nodded. Sato said trust improved once we stopped translating hesitation into agreement. Emily smiled. That sounds like him. Nathan looked at the notebook. Still studying? Every day. Even after getting the job? Especially after getting the job. A server approached and placed fresh coffee between them. Emily thanked her by name. Nathan noticed. 6 weeks earlier, he might not have. How is the new position? He asked. Hard. Nathan waited. That was not the answer you expected? It was not. Good hard, Emily explained. I am behind on software other analysts have used for years. I spend twice as long preparing some reports. Yesterday, I misunderstood an internal abbreviation and had to redo 3 pages. And Japanese? Still useful. Only useful? Emily gave him a look. You are fishing for praise on behalf of your hiring department. Nathan laughed. Maybe. She opened the notebook and showed him a new page. English and Japanese notes filled both sides. I am learning again. That is enough. Nathan became quiet. There is something I should tell you. Human Resources sent me your final evaluation after you accepted. Emily raised an eyebrow. I hope you enjoyed staying out of it. More difficult than expected. For a billionaire? For someone accustomed to believing involvement improves everything. Emily closed the notebook. Sometimes respect looks like leaving room. Nathan nodded. That lesson had reached beyond her hiring. At Whitmore Holdings, translation summaries now preserve conditional language instead of compressing it into executive conclusions. Senior teams were required to separate confirmed facts from interpretations. Nathan had also started ending important meetings with one question. What are we assuming because we think I want it to be true? The first few times, nobody answered. Eventually, someone did. Then others followed. You changed something at the company, he said. Emily shook her head. You changed something at the company. Because you interrupted dinner. Because you listened afterward. Nathan considered that distinction. Sato told me to remember your name. Did you? Apparently. Emily stood. Mr. Alvarez was waving from across the dining room. Before leaving, she looked at Nathan's untouched Swiss watch. You have not checked the time once. Nathan glanced down. Maybe I finally learned something. Emily answered him in Japanese, the same calm formality she had used the first night. Nathan understood immediately. He replied in Japanese, then switched to English. You could have said that in English. I could have. Why did you not? Emily smiled. To see if you were listening. Then she walked toward her former co-workers. Nathan remained at table 12, smiling into a cup of coffee that had gone cold again. 6 weeks earlier, everyone in that room had known who the billionaire was, yet almost nobody had truly heard him. Almost nobody had noticed the waitress either. In the end, status had been the least important language spoken that night. The quietest person in the room had not needed a title to understand what mattered. She had only needed someone, finally, willing to listen.